educate. Yeah. And it's all about educating yourself and trying to work out the phenotype of your cocktail, of what the cancer's behaving like, what it needs, what it's driven by, what's fueling it. You know, and if you see cancer like a parasite that it's constantly needing to feed, which it does, if it doesn't have the food, it just withers away and dies. You know, that's that fact. That's what happens. It can't continue unless it's constantly dividing, constantly feeding, constantly dividing. It won't survive. So that's the way to ultimately, my view, ultimately defeat it, is to use that, and then to reboot the immune system at the same time, so that we then have an immune system that keeps it suppressed.
Hello and welcome, everybody. Today on the Eat Real to Heal podcast, we're joined by Jane McLelland. Jane is a physiotherapist who was given just weeks to live after a terminal cancer diagnosis. But refusing to accept the odds, Jane dug into decades of overlooked research and used herself as a human experiment. She created a low-toxicity mix of repurposed drugs, diet, and supplements that not only stopped her cancer from growing, it disappeared entirely. So her ingenious Metro Map now helps others starve cancer of its fuel and reclaim their health. In this episode, Jane shares her remarkable story, practical tools, and why nutrition and lifestyle are at the heart of healing. Thanks everyone for being here. Enjoy this episode. Hello everybody, and welcome to the Eat Real to Heal podcast, where we bring on incredible guests, researchers, physicians, scientists, and individuals who have healed themselves with food as medicine and using any and all ways to heal themselves of their chronic diseases, including cancer. On today's show, I am very excited to welcome Jane McLelland. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. Did I get your last name right? I realized I didn't even do the check-in.
You pronounced it correctly. Everybody gets it wrong, but you got it right. Perfect. Well done.
Perfect. So Jane, your story when I think it was a podcast company maybe, or yourself reached out to me to pitch yourself for our show. You know, I dove into who you were, what you were about, and I was actually quite blown away by your own personal journey. So I definitely want to start there. Because you not only had this personal journey with cancer, not once, but twice, three times?
Yeah, well, it just kept coming back. That was the problem with it.
So tell us about that. Let's go back to the beginning. What was life like before your first cancer diagnosis? Did you know anything about cancer back then?
I was a chartered physiotherapist at the time, so I was working in the NHS and private hospitals as well. I was doing quite a bit for just helping other people. I did a lot of neuro work, so I was helping people with strokes and MS and things like that, so head injuries. And brain cancer a little bit as well. But really, I didn't know any specifics about, I knew general stuff about cancer, that it was a fast dividing cell and that you needed chemo, radiotherapy, and that was pretty much all I knew about it. You know?
Yeah, that's what I knew about it too.
Yeah, we didn't have immunotherapies. We didn't have all the latest, you know, nibs and mabs and things that they have to treat cancer these days. It was very basic. So that's all I knew. And then I got diagnosed in 1994, so a long time ago. And so I was pretty young. I was only 30 and hadn't got married or anything at the time. I just met my boyfriend, then became my husband eventually, after going through one hell of a journey together. But I had cervical cancer, and that was pretty traumatic. So hysterectomy, chemo, radiotherapy, meant no children of my own. So I was fairly depressed. I probably ate far too much of that. We're going to talk about food. I think I probably ate all the wrong things after my first diagnosis. Comfort ate a lot. I put on quite a lot of weight. And
That the result of the lifestyle change or the result of the treatment and depression?
both, actually. So I was on steroids with the chemo, and also the lifestyle thing, and suddenly just thrown into infertility, and that was a big thing for me. That was worse for me than actually the cancer at the time. Never thought at that point I was close to death or going to die. I never acknowledged just how serious it was back then. I was just more obsessed about losing my fertility and all of that. So I was massively depressed. And then I lost my mum a couple of years later. She had cancer as well. So that also threw me into more depression. But actually what woke me up was actually then having the secondary cancer myself in my lungs. So it spread to my lungs in 99.
So this is 5 years after.
Yeah,
5 years
I
after.
misdiagnosed it for a while. It was there on the x-ray and faffed about with it. But actually, by that time, I'd already, having watched my mum die and realized there were things that, because I was trying to save her first before it sort of got to me being stage 4. I was desperately trying to save her. And I knew that there were things that probably were going to help. Too late, really, to do. And I knew it was too late to do too much with her at that point. I didn't have the tools and the knowledge back then that I do now. If I was put in the same situation again, it would again be another panic. But I think we would be able to cope with it far differently. And who knows, she may still be here. I have no idea.
That's the hard thing. That's the hard thing is, we only know what we know at the time. We only have the tools in our toolbox.
Do the best that we can at the time, and that's as good as you can get. So I was running around trying to sort out the best things for her, trying to find alternative stuff. I'd looked into all sorts of weird things, but I knew that a low glucose approach or low glycemic approach was going to be useful. I also found out about IGF and dairy products. Now it's actually something called leucine, which I've since discovered, which is an amino acid which is in dairy products, which actually drives something called mTOR. Very technical, going straight into
go technical. Go technical. We like technical.
But mTOR is a big driver of cancer, and leucine is an amino acid found in dairy products that will actually drive mTOR, and mTOR drives the division of the cell. So, but I worked out that I need to cut out dairy, I need to cut out a lot of meat, and I'd worked out that I had to go low glycemic, and I'd started to do that before I was diagnosed with the stage 4, which happened in 1999.
So first, let's go back a little bit here. So prior to being diagnosed, what was your diet and lifestyle like? You were working.
It was I was a party girl, and I was doing a lot of sailing. So we'd go out sailing on the boat and come in, drink heavily. We'd be going racing every day. So there'd be a sort of like a week-long regatta. And we'd be snacking on chocolate bars during the day and then drinking heavily in the evening. Not particularly healthy. But otherwise, my diet wasn't too bad. But when I was a student, it was pretty shocking as well. So,
and did they give you any indication when you were diagnosed with the cervical cancer? Did they? I'm just curious because, and the reason I bring this up is often my clients, when they come to me, the first thing they say is, well, it must be genetic because my mom also had cancer. Or, they say, I eat really healthy. I don't understand why I have this. But, there's a difference between, there's so many definitions of what healthy eating is, right? There's so many different diets and everything out there.
And I don't, my mom did have a test for BRCA. She wasn't BRCA, and I'm not BRCA. Is there a link? I don't know. It turns out I've actually got cystic fibrosis as well. I have 2 really weird genes, not the normal cystic fibrosis genes, but 2 really weird ones, and that may have made me more predisposed to getting cancer because it changes the electrolytes crossing the membrane, etc. So I have sticky lungs, I have all of these issues. It may have actually just predisposed me to having
And was
cancer.
that a late stage CF diagnosis for you?
Yeah, I mean,
How old
literally
are you right now?
before well, I'm 60 next year,
You look
so
amazing. Okay, because I have a client right now who's doing our Eat Real to Heal program, and she was, not in a good state before she started, but since changing her lifestyle, it's been quite incredible. She's not producing as much mucus, she's not on antibiotics as much, she's not getting pneumonia every month, but she also has one of the CF genes, but she also didn't get diagnosed until she was 47. Or not 47, sorry, 37.
Well,
I think 37.
is she only a carrier, or does she have both? Because I
She's got
have
both her parents.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
are you a carrier?
I've got 2. I know
Yeah.
I'm full CF, but I have 2 different ones, one from my mum, one from my dad. So it's ended up being a slightly odd mix. But anyway, it's developed and sort of picked up speed as I got older.
Yeah.
But my
And how's
God,
your health?
these new drugs just amazing. So I was in a terrible state. So
Yeah.
I'd be doing a podcast with people like a few years ago, when I first started doing this, and I'd be coughing and hacking, and even when I go and give talks, I would go onto the podcast and people feel sorry for me. They'd come up with glasses of water and say, "You okay?" And suddenly, and I didn't
That's
know
like
what
my
was going
client.
on.
She was a
But I
soccer
kept,
player,
yeah,
and they called
but
her
I
the
had,
porker.
yeah. So I had all this bronchiectasis going on in my lungs, and they said, "Oh, you're a smoker." I thought, "No, I'm not." I am absolutely not a smoker. And they wouldn't test me for CF. I had to actually ask to have some private testing done. Good old NHS over here, like they wouldn't do it. So I had to go privately, and lo and behold, bingo, I'm CF, and I'm now in the CF program. I have the most amazing drugs, which and with those and with my cocktail of other stuff that I take, my bronchiectasis is pretty much vanished, and my fibrosis
Whoa. So
pretty much
hold
gone.
on here.
Yeah.
Okay, this is not the direction I thought this podcast was
No.
taking. You're going to come back to cancer. So only because I took on my first CF client a year and a half ago because she was so sick and there was no other option for her. She's the late. So this is like right now, I just want to message her and say, you're going to listen to this podcast. Like I'm going to send her the recording before it even goes live.
Yeah.
Because what you are about to tell me and we're about to publish a study on her as well this year, because her results are so outstanding and what it means for the CF community. But you've also stumbled onto something as well, because I know the CF doctors were telling her to eat the opposite kind of food than what she's doing now on this program.
All right. Okay.
And so we're going to talk about CF and cancer. And I was not expecting this to go this way, because you might be contributing to science in a bigger way right now. So
yeah, I'm a complicated picture. Let's put it that way.
A complicated picture. So I want to go back now. When you got the CF diagnosis, okay, did your whole life make sense to you, or?
Yeah. But wow, all this time I've had these weird chest infections all my life. I've had pseudomonas infections and mycobacteria and strep, all sorts of weird, staph aureate, and I couldn't understand why I was getting so many chest infections and why I struggled. And during periods of my life where my kids were young, they'd go to their little nursery, and they'd come back with a bug. I'd be laid out for 3 weeks trying to mother them and actually look after them and be totally flat out, just trying to cope with motherhood. And it was awful. So that's jumping forward to the fact where I said I was infertile. I ended up having a surrogate give birth for me. So that's another little piece of my story that fits in there. So an amazing lady.
Yeah.
You know, she gave birth not just once, but twice for me. So I have two
Amazing.
boys. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Bless her.
So
Wow.
relieved me of my mega depression, which is why we left the cancer story. We
Yes,
roll
exactly.
back
So
to
let's
that
go
bit.
back to that. And so here you are, you've been diagnosed. I just want to paint this picture. Did
Yeah.
you get diagnosed with CF after having cancer or before?
Oh yeah. Like I only just before COVID, I was diagnosed, you know?
This is amazing. And how many other people with CF get diagnosed this late in life?
It's very rare. Very
Very,
rare.
you are a rare
Yeah.
human being right now.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm going to connect you with Zoe. She's a rare
Okay.
human being as well. Now,
Yeah.
were you an athlete? Can I ask you that growing up?
I was always fit, actually. Yes. So I was school athletics captain. I've won various, you know, medals for karate and sailing and all sorts of things. So I've done a lot in my life, and you know, I love skiing. I love all sorts of things. Yeah.
And did you eat lots of
Used to
fruits
be
and
very fit.
vegetables growing up?
Yes, my mum was very good at making sure that we had lots of fruit and veg.
Okay.
So yes,
Okay,
yeah,
so the reason I
she was
asked,
very keen on the healthy side. She absolutely was. And then when I lived away from home and I was a student and had no money, my diet was shocking.
yes,
Um,
naturally.
so,
Yeah, naturally, like all
so that
university
was,
students.
yeah, yeah. And then sailing with my friends in my 20s, you know, really not good. You know, too much drinking, too many parties.
Mhm. Like we are,
Typical
like we all do.
kind of, yeah.
Yeah, the reason I asked that too is because she received a late diagnosis as well, and but she was a national soccer player, and she had a mother who
Me.
also made sure she had lots of fruit and veg and all
Right,
of that. So then,
right.
so it makes me look at the
Probably
environmental
protected
aspect.
me up to a
Exactly.
point.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Okay,
yeah,
so this is interesting. So now you get diagnosed with cancer. You go through full treatment, like you just
yeah.
do what the doctor
I
says,
do all the
right?
traditional stuff. I do the chemo, I have a surgery followed by chemo and radiotherapy.
Mhm.
Um, and then, yeah, and then I waited. So then it came back in my lungs. I then had an operation on my lungs. I then had more chemotherapy, and you know, my oncologist really gave me huge doses, and she was quite open about it and saying that she probably nearly killed me with it. And I think she probably, but I actually managed to get her. So after about 2 or 3 rounds, the second time round, when it had spread to my lungs, I said, "That's it. I can't take any more. You've got to stop." So
Mhm.
we came to a compromise where she dropped the dose by half. I mean, I did the full, that's it, I'm never going to have any more. I put my foot down, but she persuaded me, and she said, right, we'll keep it in the bag. If we need it in the future, it's there for you. All right.
Yeah.
So she did drop it. And I think she probably saved my life at that point, because when you're stage 4 and you have a huge amount of chemo like that, I think it actually does you sometimes more harm than good to
Mhm.
have so much chemo. I think what they should be doing is having a lower, this is my personal opinion, it's not advice, it's not saying this is, you
Yeah.
know, this is my opinion, is that we should be lowering the amount of chemo that people have. I'm not saying don't have chemo, lower it down. You can have low dose metronomic chemo, so you have it more often, smaller amounts.
Right.
And this has a different effect on the cancer than if you're actually having a big dose every 3 weeks or whatever.
Right.
So a little bit every 2 or 3 days, or whenever, or sometimes even every day, will actually have a different effect on the cancer. It actually stimulates the immune system rather than suppressing the immune system, which is what happens with big doses. So
Mhm.
just my opinion, that's what we should be having, and we should have a bigger cocktail. That's what saved me, is a bigger cocktail of things together. So I was adding all sorts of supplements. I was doing intravenous vitamin C. I was, you know, adding all sorts of things, and that worked for a while, until 2003, when the cancer then popped up in my bone marrow because of the chemo and the radiotherapy. And that's when I started to think, okay, yikes, whatever I'm doing is not working. and the cervical cancer markers were fine. They were still in normal range, but I had these other things going on. I'd suddenly got a deleted p53 in my blood, which is the p53 is like the guardian of the genome. It's the thing it protects you against cancer, and that was suddenly deleted. I hadn't got that anymore. And then I had raised other markers, the PKM2 and MMP2 and all these things and markers of the cancer going on in my bone marrow. It wasn't a classic diagnosis with bone marrow biopsies or anything. That's not, you can diagnose cancer in many different ways, and this was diagnosed by looking through the microscope, seeing I had abnormal red blood cells and these other markers. So that was going on in 2003, and I knew that this would probably turn into leukemia. It could be really quickly quite fatal. So I had to do something fairly urgently. So I was rummaging around trying to find, and I actually saved some articles which I thought I might need in the future, and thank God I did. And I pulled them out and thought, yeah, this drug looks useful. I'm going to go to my integrative doctor and ask him if he could prescribe it. And he'd never prescribed dipridamole before. This is an old antiplatelet drug, and it had good effects for melanoma, but I knew it might be good for my blood as an antiplatelet drug and things. So I tried that, and then I tried adding in this statin, lovastatin, which I knew had 5 times better effect at killing the cancer when you link it with this non-steroidal. So I added this non-steroidal called anti-inflammatory drug called etodolac, which is normally used for arthritis, with the lovastatin, which is normally used for cholesterol, but I was using it for an anti-cancer effect. That synergized with the dipridamole. Everything synergized together. It's sort of like that made that work 5 times better. That made that work 5 times better. The end result was that actually my cancer just, disappeared.
Okay, hold on. Okay, you went fast through all of that. Okay, so here's the thing, but not about the specifics, but about here you are doing research and you're going back to your oncologist team and you're saying, hey, can you try this and mix this and this together?
And
what are they thinking
wouldn't
at this time?
do that these days.
No, like, were they just thinking that, sure, why not? Like, you're so far gone that we'll
stage 4. Yeah, why not? And that's the point. And we need doctors to be more to put themselves in the shoes of the cancer patient and imagine if they're in that situation, they're trying to save their lives. I was young. I was, by the time I got the diagnosis, I was 35.
That's 20 years ago.
35. I was a bit older than that. So yeah, it was. I was still young, very young. So it was really very scary for me, and I wanted kids, I wanted life. I just felt that the whole thing was just going to pass me by, and my life would have just been nothing. I wouldn't have done anything of any note, and that was it. That was me done, and I couldn't bear it. I couldn't bear it that I was just going to be a little, nothing really.
Exactly.
And
so let's just go back to before you even go to the oncologist with these suggestions. You're doing research on your own and you're just stumbling across
no, I'm looking hard. No. Oh my God, I'm looking hard. I'm visiting hospital libraries. I'm raiding. So lots of I'm reading lots of journals in places where they've got them. They had a place in Regent's Park, which was great for that kind of place. So lots of alternative magazines and the Townsend Letter and Life Extension magazine and things like that. So I was trawling through everything, reading everything, and they had a big library of stuff and lots of different books. I just sit in there for every afternoon.
And is this
trawling through stuff?
So did you like reading? Because I'm imagining our audience is listening to this. Okay. We have a woman right now who just got diagnosed with bone cancer, or cancer that's metastasized to her bone. And I cannot picture her right now pulling out a journal article to read it because of the fact that she didn't even read her own lab work that showed
Mm.
that she had cancer, breast cancer that spread to her bone, but she just assumed the doctor would call and tell her, and the doctors never even called to tell her. I had to show her that it was written there in her lab work and that she needed to follow up with her doctor. And she's like, but they would have called me. And I was like, no, that's not how this works.
They
You
don't,
have to
you
be
know,
an
they
advocate.
sometimes, yeah, they sometimes write thing in a very cryptic way. So they'll say, what is it? T1N0M1 or something. So it means that there's a metastasis, a number of nodes involved in the metastases, and you have to try and work out what that code means.
Well, hers
And
just said breast cancer potentially metastasized to bones, many lesions, needs to go see the breast surgeon at this clinic. Like it said that in there. But this is what I'm saying. You are not the norm. You are this odd, really cute, super smart duck, okay, that's out in the world that you get diagnosed with cancer not once, not twice, but 3 times now, and all 3 different, it's metastasized to all
so,
different
yeah,
parts of the body.
so it started in the cervix, and then it went to my lungs, and now
And
it's
then
in my bone marrow. So it's
exactly.
a different cancer. The first one spread to my lungs. That was the same cancer, but it was spread to my lungs. This is a totally new
You
cancer that is in my bone marrow.
exactly. So did you
So,
like reading journal articles before? Was your life just naturally
well,
designed to put
you
you
know,
in this place?
I was a physiotherapist, so I was health orientated anyway. I've always been interested in how the body functions, how it works, and cancer. I didn't want to learn about it, but I've had no choice, did I really?
That's what I
Um,
was getting
and
at, that
I
you
was
chose to do that.
absolutely sure that there was an answer. I was convinced there was an answer out there.
And
Absolutely convinced. I was
and
not
that is
going
the
to
nugget.
stop looking until I found an answer. And I recognized the fact that things, by reading this research, that one thing made this other thing work 5 times better, and then that synergized. So I knew that there were synergies, and maybe by adding things together and having a cocktail, and that's the key thing for me, was the cocktail. It has to be a cocktail. You cannot cure or even look at helping cancer without finding the right cocktail. We don't have the right cocktails for everybody. We don't.
No,
And
no.
that's something we have to find out and work out and learn. And everybody's slightly different. You know, everybody's cancer works in a slightly different way. But that's the point, is we have to work out what the best cocktails are for different types of metabolism, for different types of genetic mutations, for different subtypes of cancer. You know, there are all these different little pigeonholes that we have to look at for trying to work out the best cocktail for someone, and that involves everything that you do. It involves a lifestyle, it involves a sleep, it involves stress, it involves all of those things, your emotions, all come together to create this environment where cancer can either thrive or you can suppress it. And I think most of us go through life suppressing cancer quite happily. You know, we all have cancer happening in our bodies all the time, but our immune systems actually keep it under control, and our P53 gene. So, you know, we have to maintain good health as best we can. But, you know, it's not having a good time. I've had so many people come to me and say, oh, my diet, I was a vegan, I was this, I was really careful about my diet, and I still got cancer. There are so many factors that lead to cancer. You cannot put it down to one thing or another.
No,
You know,
and changing
it's
your diet for the last 10 years also doesn't negate the first 20 years, before that either, because it can take cancer 5 to 20 years before it's even detected. So it started way before you even can imagine.
And I think most people that have cancer will find out that they have had a gut issue at some point. I know I did. So that, yeah, and I did some gut testing when I had my diagnosis. I ended up having a parasite in there called blastocystis, and that is it's not always pathogenic, but I think for me it was part of the syndrome of what happened to me. And I think everybody, if they get the opportunity, should probably have their gut tested to see what's going on in there, to see what bacteria they actually have, whether they got enough bifidobacteria or whether they got enough Akkermansia, which is another strain which is good, or whether, because there are some bacteria which are very linked to cancer, like fusobacterium. If you got too much of that, you're more likely to get colorectal cancer and lots of other cancers as well. So
and is that all in your book?
No, not all of it, but I do talk about my story. I do talk about my gut testing. I talk about the fact that certain foods caused a problem for me, and I probably had some histaminosis or problem going on with my gut where things were inflammatory for me in the gut, so I couldn't eat certain things, still avoid certain foods occasionally. Aubergines I don't like. Too many white potatoes I don't actually like. So a lot of the sort of deadly nightshade family I try and avoid. But that's more not for the it's yes for the cancer as well, but it's more to lower inflammatory effects in my bowel. I don't think that's a good thing to have, and having a leaky gut is a problem, really. So, and I think that can be a problem for most people at some point with cancer. I reckon my theory is that everybody at some point has probably had a leaky gut, and that there's bacteria, there's pathogens have leaked into the system, got somewhere in the body, and bingo, that's been part, not the only part of the setup of the problem.
Hi, it's Scott from Team Richer Health, and I'm super excited to share our team's 20-year vision. We will be building Canada's very first chronic disease reversal and mental health disorder reversal hotel and wellness center right here in the heart of the Cowichan Valley, British Columbia. This will be a state-of-the-art, 100% plant-based, integrative health facility, a place for education, healing, regenerative tourism, and sustainable community building. It's more than a wellness center. It's a mission designed to help people around the world reverse chronic disease, overcome anxiety and depression, and return to their families healthy and thriving. This project will also create meaningful work and a lasting impact within a local community charged up for this project. But grand visions require big support. That's why we're inviting passionate investors who believe in healing and global wellness to join us as founding partners in bringing this first of its kind project to life. We would love your support in helping us spread the word. And if you know someone who's passionate about creating real life impact and might be interested in investing, we would love to connect. You'll find all the details in the show notes, or you can reach out to us directly at richerhealth.ca. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being part of this vision.
Well, yes, of course, because when we have leaky gut, when we allow our intestinal tract to become unhealthy, we stop absorbing nutrients, we stop eliminating waste. This changes the cytoplasm of the cell, which then has an effect on, the nucleus and the DNA and the chromosomes. Everything gets affected. And yes, 100%, I agree. And that's why with my clients, the first thing we do is we heal that, which then also heals the histamine response in the body, which then makes it that they don't have a flare up when they eat nightshades, and then they can go back to eating all their nightshades without having this response, and then all of a sudden their illnesses melt away. So I agree with you fully. There is a piece I'm super curious about when you first started discovering, for example, leucine and dairy, and you start discovering the effect of diet on health. Were your doctors at all insinuating you should change your diet at all? Or were they just like, go eat what you want?
Of course they weren't. This was all, stuff I was doing on my own. I couldn't discuss it with them at all. I mean, I had a fantastic oncologist, and you know, she was amazing, and she never talked down at me. She was always interested in what I was doing. Didn't tell her very much because I just thought it would just be frowned upon or thought of as silly. So I didn't really discuss much of what I was doing. And that, unfortunately, is a theme that still carries on today. People can't discuss their diets. They can't discuss the supplements they're taking. They can't discuss the off-label drugs. It's just not welcomed by the oncology profession. You know, there's still blank walls put up for people so that they can't actually break through and say, right, this is what I'm doing. And it's a big shame. That's something I want to change. I really want to change, because I need doctors to actually realize what patients are understanding and how much they're doing, and just the effort involved to trying to get well, because it was a massive effort for me. And it's an effort for most people to get better from cancer. It's not, you know, it's just not a little walk in the park. It's a big change in everything that you do. So yeah, I mean, my diet, I did various different diets, to be honest, and I'm not prescriptive about what I tell people to do, because I think ultimately it's down to you, your choice. You can read my book, you can work out kind of what you need to do for yourself. I don't say this is the diet you have for cancer, because, you know, we're all different and we have cultural differences, we have different tastes, we have, you know, so yeah, no one diet for anyone. And I tried the macrobiotic diet to start with, which was pretty awful. I dragged my poor husband, ended up eating these horrendous meals for months. Anyway, loads of seaweed and stuff. And so I did that, and then I sort of switched over to more of a Gerson style, which was more paleo kind of diet, with lots of juices, loads of juices. Palms of my hands and my feet were, soles of my feet were a lovely shade of orange for a long time. You know, I did all sorts of things just to try and give myself the I was all about getting the nutrients in, get the gut, get the polyphenols, get the, you know, and all of that. And actually, I probably got a lot of that wrong. I probably overdid the juices. I probably overdid this and that and the other. And I had this green, disgusting mix I used to drink, which, you know, I lovingly call my primordial soup in my book. It's disgusting, with full of spirulina and chlorella and all that stuff. So all of that were things that I did all the time. You know, I'd have different and then I'd time myself. So in the mornings I'd have these supplements, then mid-morning I'd have enzymes and these things, and then at lunchtime I'd have that. And then, you know, I took so many different pills throughout the day. It was constantly keeping on it, you know, let's just suppress it all the time. So that was me. And, you know, hard, expensive as well, actually, lots of supplements.
Yeah. And would you say that contributed to your healing, or do you think it was more the cocktail of these off-label drugs that you mixed together? What, you know, how, yeah, when you look back.
It's a mixture of everything. So I had lots of the supplements that I have were that I look back on that I took were incredibly effective for when you look at the research, you know. Artemisinin, for example, which I'd use to sort of clear out my gut and stuff, is really effective. Berberine is a natural version of metformin, which is a diabetic drug. And the same amount of berberine, about 500 milligrams, has the same effect on blood glucose as 500 milligrams of metformin. So there were things that I had that were supplements that were natural, quercetin, all sorts of things I had, you know, lots of natural supplements. But you know, when it came down to it, it was the drugs, I think, ultimately that tipped me over that balance. But it was the cocktail, always the cocktail, that I probably had this base layer of stuff that I was doing that was maybe suppressing it at one level. I just needed that icing on the top, just to sort of kick it into touch, if you know what I mean. It just needed that extra level just to make it go.
Yeah. And so when you were doing all of this, there's a few things that you said that I just need to reflect back to our audience here. Number one, you said you knew there was a solution. Like there was not a doubt in your mind that there was a solution.
Oh,
You
I
knew
knew,
you weren't
I
gonna.
knew I would find, so I was so determined,
That's huge.
piling through all that work and that literature and just think, right, okay, I've got to find it. I've got to find it, you know?
Yeah. And other people would have said, stop, like, you know what?
Yeah,
Like just accept that you have this,
yeah,
you know,
I
like
know. And just
the doctors have
go and
done
lie
everything.
down and die peacefully.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, the doctors know what they're doing. They're trained in this stuff. I had a doctor tell one of my clients who they brought me into the hospital to work with them, and I met with the oncology team, all these new students, and then the oncologist. And he told me, I am the specialist in North America for this type of cancer. You don't need a second opinion, he said. He said that. He is a specialist and you don't need a second opinion. And he said she's going to die in a week. And it was a 9-year-old child.
Oh God.
And he said, you don't need a second opinion. So the parent said, it doesn't matter. We're still going to apply this metabolic nutritional therapy to my daughter because they wanted to see if they could at least get her out of the hospital, but they wouldn't let her leave the hospital because she was hooked up to everything. And so stage 4 liver cancer, we knew that probably there, you know, and now listening to you though, I wish I had almost had that same approach, you know, but I had my 3 little kids. I was like busy working and I have this client 3 hours away in a hospital from me, but I still decided to support the family. But the parents are like, not going to,
you know, I want to help everybody who comes to me with cancer. I want to sit down with them and go through the research and work out what might be, you know, suitable for them to discuss with their doctors. But I can't do that with everyone, you know. I did that. It's painful for me. So that's why I've kind of written my book and why I've created the online course, so that people can go out there and educate and research for themselves and try and work out what might be best for them. I think people find it very frustrating. Part of my approach is that I don't prescribe. I don't say this is what you should take for this type of cancer. And it would be wrong of me to say that, because you know, we need to look at the best cocktails. And what I'd love to do is obviously have an integrative clinic and put together some cocktails that I'm pretty sure would be quite effective. But you know, we need to get proper approval for studies and all the rest of it. But you know, I would love to do that. I've done so much research on so many different cancers, and I know the key drivers for the metabolic drivers of many of these different and weird stuff. I get people come to me with really weird cancers that require a lot of research and digging around where you'd normally find, and people say, wow, I thought I'd look really hard at my cancer and I'd done so much, but I can't believe, and you just dug all this up. And but it's actually trying to work out how to research in the right way, in the right, you know, I mean, I've done it. I've done it for a long time.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it's the same on our end as well. And with that little girl, we took over the fridges in the hospital, taught the parents how to make everything. The nurses were helping. We applied the therapy, and it took 18 hours for her levels to come back up to normal. So she was able to leave the hospital. She ended up living 3 months and was able to be in her home. And it just makes me think, like, if it had been any other family, that doctor announcing that you don't need a second opinion, he knew everything about the cancer. Like, you don't, it's impossible to know everything.
No.
And what
they don't know. They're not taught about the metabolic
no, they're
side.
not.
It's something that I've had to teach myself. Nobody's taught me. Everything that I teach other people is stuff that I have learned myself. Exactly. It's not, and it's to people, it's new because nobody's ever taught them this stuff before. This is, you know, I'm going into a new branch of meds. Well, I say new, I mean, it's been, Otto Warburg discovered it in 1924, but you know, it's a new branch for oncology. They've only just accepted that the metabolic side is as important as it is, in 2015 it added, they added it as a hallmark of cancer. In other words, it's a classic hallmark that cancer will use different metabolisms. So it is an Achilles heel. It's somewhere where we can attack it, where we can actually really work at getting rid of the cancer by attacking this little area where it's different to your healthy cells.
Well, Dr. Seyfried is doing incredible research in this area as well. And he really, and this is current day research, but also based on Otto Warburg's research as well, which Dr. Max Gerson's research was also based on. But saying that, no, we need to stop looking at cancers just being a genetic mutation. We need to look at the metabolism of the cell in the studies that they've done, where they took a mutated nucleus and put it into a healthy cell, and all of a sudden the cell healed. And then they took a healthy nucleus and put it into an unhealthy cell, and all of a sudden it mutates and becomes cancerous. And this is not what our current oncology practices are based on.
No, they think that cancer is still a result just of mutated genes, and it's yes, the mutated genes drive more glycolysis, drive more glutaminolysis, which are these abnormal metabolic pathways. So it adds fuel to the fire, but it's not what starts it. There's a problem with the site is in the cytoplasm, and that all starts from outside the cell. We know actually it's the microenvironment, the tumor microenvironment, that triggers the changes on the cell surface, which then sends in these messages to the cell to change and do something weird and start feeding itself a little bit more and do this weird metabolism. And is it the influence of microbes? Is it the influence of inflammation? Is it an influence of lots of different factors coming together?
Nutrient deficiency, toxicity,
obesity, carcinogens. There are a whole host of different factors that are involved in creating that abnormal tumor microenvironment. And there we are. It's a complicated thing, and to try and say that you can cure cancer just with chemo, radiotherapy, immunotherapy, even immunotherapies are spectacularly unsuccessful, really. They can be very successful, but you're very lucky if they are. They something like 10% will have a good result with immunotherapy that are eligible for them, and there are only a certain number of cancers that are really, that do well with immunotherapy.
The studies have been done as well to show for certain cancers that chemotherapy only is successful in about 2% of those cancers. When they do the research, there was a study done in the 70s, and again another study that was done about 10 years ago to replicate that study. But meanwhile, your doctor's not telling you that the chance of the chemo making, increasing your chance of survival, it's really only effective in 2% of those cases. But meanwhile,
you can make it work better. That's the point, is that yes, that is the case. And that's because it's working on the chemo is working on the fast dividing cell, but you've got the stem cell in the background, which is constantly slowly dividing and creating its progeny. But it's the stem cell that you can attack with this sort of starving effect, which is not diet necessarily. Diet comes into it, but it's looking at different ways to block or lower the ability of the cancer cell to use those nutrients in the same way.
Right.
So it's a
and this is where we need better communication with our oncologists, because of the fact that people also need to know this, that if you've been diagnosed, surgery might be effective, let's say 60%, the chemo adds an additional 2%, maybe radiation adds an additional 7%, but then you still have this other huge chunk, whatever my math just added up to, let's say 30%, which then needs the supplements, the food, the additional off-label drugs, this cocktail that you were
Stress
talking about.
reduction, meditation, all of these things, which, important and can boost your immune system.
Yeah.
Yeah, just you can't treat cancer like most diseases where you can take one pill or something. It's multifactorial, and that's the problem, is that and that's why we don't currently have a cure for cancer, because it's needs that much bigger approach. And unfortunately, the behemoth that is the medical profession is not prepared to welcome the integrative side fast enough. We should have integration with all intravenous vitamin C and things like that should now be accepted as part of the whole process. But there's still a lot of resistance to intravenous vitamin C. They just think it's going to be antioxidant and do the opposite to the chemo. And actually that's not the case at all. And a lot of misunderstandings about why things work in the integrative side, and they are totally confused by it and stuck in the dark ages. I see it all the time, and I'm still gobsmacked that people won't wake up or read the latest research.
Well, one of the biggest problems I see is like with my client with CF, that for her, she's getting these good results, but the CF clinic and all her doctors don't ask her a single question about what she's doing. They're like, okay, just keep doing what you're doing. Bye-bye, on to the next person. And this is to change. That's one thing that needs to change, is that when you see like you might be considered, you are on the opposite end of the bell curve, right? You're not the norm. But the problem with the research is we like to cut off the end of the bell curve. We like to get rid of these outliers, is what you are called, right? You're an outlier. And then we just like to get rid of them because it skews the research. And that's the problem with the scientific method, is you can't have outliers. But then there's no one to actually come in and question the outliers like you and say, hey, tell us what you did. What can we learn from this? Right? Nobody's asking those questions within the medical system. And what you said about the doctors as well, I think what you did is smart, where you're doing your research, you're testing, you're trying, because it's easy to be discouraged if you share too much with your doctor, who comes along and says, there's no point in doing that. Like I had one doctor tell a client of mine, oh, don't stop smoking, because that would be too stressful on your system if you quit smoking right now, while you've just been diagnosed with cancer. That's what the oncologist told this 29-year-old girl, and said, don't change your diet because it would put your body under too much stress right now. You don't need that. Okay. So, but what you did say is a really important piece that I want to move into now. Right now, to go and ask doctors to be investigators, researchers like you've done, to ask them to be nutritionists and dietitians, it would be like asking your plumber to also become an electrician.
Exactly. And you're right. It is asking them to do something entirely different.
Yes.
And oncologists, I've heard them say this before. Oh, oncology used to be so simple. They're now making it so much more complicated. It's not like the good old days. And I'm throwing in a whole load more complication there as well. So let's look at diet. Let's look at all of these other things as well. So, and a whole cocktail of potential off-label drugs. So these are drugs that are not normally used for cancer, but have anti-cancer effects. And if used appropriately and used maybe if we can work out the right cocktails, and I'm trying to make note of everybody who does well with off-label drugs, and to try and work out in my head, maybe wrong, but I've got to try and work out what pathways have they blocked, what they haven't, which are important, and look at the phenotype. So the phenotype, the way that every cancer expresses itself, is slightly different. So a triple negative breast cancer will be different to a HER2 positive, to just an estrogen positive breast cancer. They all have specific traits that they have, and that means that they will actually feel or behave in a different way And it's actually understanding those differences and what that might mean to the diet, what it might mean to the off-label drugs, what it might mean to the supplements, and what, it's all of that. You need to put that picture together, then try and work out, okay, well, that worked in that patient, didn't work in that one. Why not? What was missing in there? What was, and I still feel like I'm that cancer Sherlock Holmes that I was back in 2000, whenever, just still trying to work out what the hell's going on. And I, in a way, I find it, I still find it a challenge, and I still find it interesting. I want to spend, and that's what I want to do, is spend more time working it out. And then I would love to have an integrative clinic in the UK, which would be open and receptive to trying out some different cocktails. I have a team of doctors I can work with. I've got it all, it's all there. I just need a clinic.
Yeah, well,
the money to do it. So it's just that's what I want. I want to get to the point where we can really try some more advanced cocktails with these people, and the scientific method would say, oh no, you add one thing and then you add another and then you see if that works or that. But actually,
and how will you know what worked? That's the other thing there. Like, well, sometimes
the other thing is to find out what does work. Have a bigger cocktail and go, right, that worked, and then take things out rather than add them in. Exactly. So we're already getting to the end point. We go, we know that works. If we take that out, does it still work?
Yeah.
So, and actually go backwards with it rather than adding and say, oh no, that doesn't work. And then they swap it and they try. And the cocktail is all about the cocktail. So you start with a cocktail, you find out which cocktail works best. And, you might have to try. And you have this going on where you have about 9 or 10 different drugs, and these are all low toxicity, so they're all working at a little tiny point here and there in the cancer. But so you might have 9 or 10 drugs, and then you have a range of supplements, you have a range of, and then you have the diet, and then you have the lifestyle, and you have all of this going on. So you have, it's a big project to try and manage, and to try, to get the scientific method to work it out. It's really tough. Seafrieder's got a very basic approach where he just says, right, let's stop the glycolysis with this. Let's use this drug for blocking glutaminolysis. I think it's actually too basic. And I don't think his cocktail is going to be as effective as he thinks it's going to be.
I agree.
We'll see. Maybe it will be. Who knows? But it's a very basic, and maybe that, I've got there, if you look at my, what's called my Metro Map, which I've got in my book, which is like a simplified version of the metabolism of cancer and how it uses various glucose pathways, how it uses various glutamine and fat pathways. And anyway, there are certain pairings that work really well together. So if you block that and you block that, then yeah, that's going to work really well. But, rarely will you just use 2. 2 is unlikely to give you the result that you need. But, we need to work out what the best pairings are and what the key drivers are. We need to get better diagnostics, better ability to see whether the cancer's driven, is it primarily driven by glucose, glutamine, or fat? And you can do this with PET scans. You can see whether something, so you look at a PET scan with glucose, you can see the sugar uptake, you can swap it for glutamine. And this works very well with brain cancers because, they all brains will use a lot of glucose anyway. So it can be very confusing sometimes to see what's going on with brain cancer. So a glutamine, which is an amino acid rather than glucose, a glutamine PET scan can actually give you a reasonably good indication, but that's looking at the glutamine uptake. And prostate cancers, they use choline, which is more of a fat, to see, because prostate cancer uses more fat uptake. So yeah, but we should be looking at that with all cancers. How much fat, how much protein, how much sugar, and actually working out a cocktail to suit the balance at that time. It may change. You know, if you change the diet, change this, so you go on a particular diet, you may change, or you probably will change the way that the cancer feeds. It'll go, okay, well, I can't feed on that anymore. I'll swap to feeding on this. And that's what it does. So it's constantly changing, and you have to move with it. You have to find out what it's doing next, second guess what it's going to do next as well, try and block where it's likely to head. And this is it's tricky, but it can be done, because we know that, and I can see in the research, if you block that, it'll use that, because they're doing the research and they can see the type of changes that occur when you block certain things. So it's
Hi, it's Scott from Team Richer Health. I'm excited to share that we've partnered with GoParity Canada to raise $44,000 to open our next Green Mustache Cafe on Vancouver Island, inside an upcoming beautiful wellness center in the Cowichan Valley. This funding will help us cover the early costs, staffing, sourcing, operations, so we can keep serving medicine on a plate and bring healing food to even more people. When we opened our first cafe in Whistler back in 2013, our mission was bold: to address the chronic disease epidemic with food as medicine. Since then, we've grown to 4 locations, been awarded as Best Healthy Food in Whistler for 12 years in a row, published books, and worked with hospitals, agencies, companies, and global wellness brands, even Tony Robbins' team, and most importantly, helped thousands reclaim their health with 100% organic, plant-based meals. Now we're ready to grow again, and you can be part of it. This is an investment with returns, made simple through GoParity's impact investing platform. If you believe in food as medicine and want your money to make a real difference, click the link in the show's notes to learn more and invest today. Thanks for listening and for believing in this mission.
So you're not saying use this on an individual level and then go in and get the PET scans and the different tests. Like, you're saying, look at the research to show what's already been proven, right? And then apply that, because like, this is why I see it's hard, right? Because in public health,
actually,
we're trying to find the solution that's going to apply to the masses, right? And so, and then we can hopefully get
but I don't
so
think
how do we do this in real life?
I still think we'll still fail, because in real life, cancers mutate and they change what they feed on, they change how they, how they resist drugs. So you're constantly going to have to chase and test and see what's going on in that tumor, and actually change what the strategy occasionally, depending on what you find.
So how does an individual do that then? Somebody's been diagnosed. So let's because I know 90% of the people are not going to do the research you did. How do they get the test?
Yeah. This is hard. So that you can do various metabolic tests to see whether there are glycolytic enzymes. So this is the glycolysis, that Wahlberg effect that's happening. So there are certain tests that are useful, looking at something called LDH, lactate dehydrogenase. Now, I had a test called the PKM2, which was again looking at another enzyme in that pathway. There are other tests you can look at. So I had MMP2 test, which was looking at the metastasis potential of it. There are many different tests you can look at, but you should be able to have PET scans done so you can actually see what's going on. And you can look at you need to look at your whole metabolism. So if you are insulin resistant, for example, you're more likely to have a cancer driven by glucose. There are lots of different ways to look at it, and you can also do these blood draws now, where they will look at specific mutations, and they can work out the mutations in the cancer just from a blood test, and they'll go, okay, that's got an EGFR, that's got a BRAF, and they can actually work out, and those things will give you an indication as to what the cancer is feeding on as well. So there are many ways that you can do it, and it's just a matter of bringing that all together. I'm trying to create an app to look at all of that and to pull that together so that we can work out roughly what the cancer's up to, and then work out the kind of cocktails that an individual will need to apply. But it's taken a while.
So yeah, of course. And it makes me think as well of partnerships that need to come into place as well. So have you noticed that there's any benefit that any tools you could use with all of the new testing kits that are can be mailed to your home, take a swab, send it back, and any of these proving to be useful?
All of that is useful, and the SNPs that you can find out, so your 23andMe and all that sort of thing, they're useful. You can get a bit obsessed by some of that stuff and not take the right sort of thing, because a lot of people are told, oh well, green tea is not going to be used, is going to be bad for your methylation or something, and then they're not blocking the glutamine, and that's a problem, because that because that's one of the best things about green tea, is it blocks the glutamine uptake, and glutamine is a key fuel for cancer. And that's, one of the best things I did was drink lots of green tea. Still do. 4 to 10 cups a day. That's how much I was drinking.
And that's the thing about science, that also the way a study is conducted, it might not be measuring enough of the substance. For example, why a lot of the vitamin C studies are not beneficial to us, because they're studying 500 milligrams of vitamin C versus 50,000 milligrams, which, so this is what a lot of people don't know. And also the medical community, they'll look at these studies and say, green tea didn't have an effect, but how much green tea do you need?
Exactly. And that's important. And the metabolism of a mouse is very different to the metabolism of a human. And we need to do more, and we can do far more studies than we have been doing in vivo, in humans. And we need to, I just want to leapfrog over the rubbish that's being done at the moment, and the sort of the great science, let's do it all bit by bit, slowly. No, this is not how we're going to change. We're going to stay in exactly the same place. Science will not move on with cancer until we leapfrog and go, we need to change this. And this is my mission, is to sort of be as much of a disruptor as I possibly can. I've been keeping my head below the parapet until quite recently, and I'm causing a bit more of a noise, and it's causing me problems, because they're threatening all sorts of Cancer Act 1939 with me, and they're trying to silence me. But that's on the side.
So can we talk about that right now? Because
if you want,
I do want to, and here is why. And in fact, just on Friday, I sat for the whole day to really contemplate whether I was going to come out and talk about my own experience with being silenced. I was invited to go to China to teach almost 600 physicians over a course of 10 days, all about metabolic nutrition for the reversal of diabetes and cancer.
Right.
Wow. And we came back home and received a death threat. Then we also received on a piece of paper slid underneath our office door on Chinese letterhead, saying we should not be teaching this to the physicians. We've received letterhead on FDA letterhead, even though we don't have the FDA in Canada, saying we're not allowed to do certain things. Well, we've received cease and desist letters. I've been reported to the College of Physicians, even though I am a researcher and a doctor, technically, having done my doctorate, which is equivalent to PhD. So this stuff does happen.
Yeah, they're trying hard to suppress it. And I think, the cozy setup that we have with Big Pharma controlling everything, and these trials, and just keeping everything ticking along, with Pfizer ruling the world, and GSK. I think it's important to know that behind the scenes this is happening, and, there's an attempt to silence me right now.
So what do you do when that happens? Because I realized I allowed that to happen. I got scared. I was supposed to go back to China and teach, and I didn't go back. you know, so what do you do when that happens? How do you
Okay, so somebody wrote to Warwick University and said I was going to breach the Cancer Act 1939. This was back in early September. So I thought, okay, right, well, I'm not going to breach it. So the Cancer Act 1939 is a very unique British thing. Okay, it's why we don't have adverts on our TV for all sorts of drugs all the time, because even drug companies can't advertise. You can't do anything over here in terms of sell anything, sell any potential treatments. And I don't sell a treatment. What I do is provide information for people to research. So it's education. I provide education, information. That's the key thing that I provide. But this people look at the cover of my book, think I'm just going to be talking about diet, that I'm going to be prescribing a diet, or I'm going to be prescribing something. I don't prescribe anything at all. So I was giving this talk. I thought, right, okay, somebody's got it in for me. They want to silence me. There's been an article recently come out in the Lancet saying quackery, starving cancer, and other dietary misconceptions, and that's been used to stop me from talking at UCL. All right. So somebody used that to say she's going to be breaching the Cancer Act. She's quack. She's this, she's that. So, you know, and if you look at what I say in my book, the diet bit is actually, I don't prescribe any particular diet, and I talk about different ones that I did, etc. And ultimately it's down to the individual to do that. But what I do talk about is the metabolic side and pathways and all the rest of it, and, you know, what may be useful. So that, well, I know I'm not breaching the Cancer Act. It's all about giving advice as well. So I don't like to advise anybody.
I say don't advise, prescribe, or diagnose. I'll educate you. I'll point you to the literature. I will show you how to find the information yourself. Yeah,
exactly. So I booked somewhere else. So they were saying, tell us why you're not going to breach. And I thought, well, I'm not even going to bother to respond to this. You're being so unpleasant. I don't want to talk to your stupid university anyway. The wokery involved with these universities these days, and, you know, any hint of any potential problem, let's just shut it down. Let's not talk about it, and let's just stop this person talking. So I was stopped from talking there, but happily, very happily booked somewhere else, and thought, 2 fingers up, I'll just carry on, give my talk somewhere else.
You give the 2 fingers. Is this what you mean? We give the 1 finger.
Yeah, 2 fingers.
I like the 2 fingers.
So that's what I did. So I wasn't scared by that. And the problem was that the UCL one recently was so close to Christmas that I couldn't find another venue to host me. And I kind of knew it was going to potentially happen, but I couldn't find anywhere else. I tried to line it up so that I could just switch from one place to another if it happened. And, you know, because we had a good sized lecture theatre. I had 150 people coming.
Wow.
From all over the world. You know, I mean, I had a medical oncologist from Colombia. I had patients from Calgary in Canada, and I had several people from Europe coming over. One from France, one from Italy, one from Prague, and, you know, all over Finland. So I was deeply upset that somebody had obviously alerted UCL to the fact that this starving cancer, quackery, all the rest of it, and they're trying to make out that I'm, you know, something that I'm not. And it's vindictive. And you know, there's a definite movement out there to try and I think it comes down to a handful of people. But behind those people, I do wonder about the influence of Big Pharma, because there are some big players with some big pharmaceutical names behind them who are trying to silence me. And I know who they are. I won't say who they are right now.
And there are big players, because YouTube, every day we have over 125 podcasts that have been done with researchers, scientists, medical professionals with their MD licenses, and your podcast will get taken down. So YouTube sends us a message almost every other day saying we've removed this podcast because it's medical misinformation, they call it. But it's not medical misinformation. These are authors who've published their studies, who are referencing other authors who published their studies, but it's called medical misinformation. So our podcasts by YouTube are being pulled down off of our site. So that's happening. Our book, Amazon reached out to our publishers to say that they won't be publishing any books that claim anything heals anything. So they are making us change the title of our book. So these are not, YouTube and Amazon are not little.
I've had to change the title of my talk. So starving cancer, can't use that anymore, you know, because that's, even though I discuss metabolic pathways, and these are specific pathways that you can, you know, help to block the cancer, but that's, you know, it's not diet as everybody thinks.
And based on the fact that you did it, can we just talk about the fact that you are telling your own human personal story?
And that is not against the Cancer Act 1939. Debate, discussion of anything new is not forbidden, and a lot of people have misinterpreted the Cancer Act, and they it's bad, because it's a battle out there right now to get my voice heard. But what they don't realize, I have a very big army of supporters behind me, and I think they've not realized behind so I have this closed Facebook group which has got 83,000 or something people, and these are all people who've had cancer, or, you know, who are closely involved with somebody with cancer. So they are these people are in my group not by chance, not because they've clicked follow on some public person. They've just ended up in my group because they want to learn, because it's something. So I have some very loyal, deeply loyal followers in my tribe, and I think that, you know, if they try and shut me down, they can't. It's already, that train has left the station, you know. It's too late. They're way too late to try and stop, which is why I don't feel so scared about going out there and talking a little bit more. And they'll probably try and prosecute me for something, I don't know. Maybe I have slipped up and given advice where I shouldn't. I don't know. I'm trying to go back through, because I know they're investigating me. There's this professor who's digging deep into my background and looking at everything I do and everything I say. And I know he's going to watch this. Great. Hello, Professor David Colquhoun. So
good. Hello, Professor David. You know what? Come sit with us. Come learn with us. Let's have a cup of green tea, and let's see, like, what is it that you want to, you know, help us learn what you want us to learn, but also be open to learning something else. Like, this is how discoveries are made. Unless you want to, I have a medical encyclopedia sitting right up here on my shelf, and the reason it's there is to remind me it's the history of medicine, okay, as we know it globally. And what it shows is all the archaic practices. We have everything from bloodletting and teeth pulling and witchery, which, you know, they used to bring in a priest to get rid of the demons. Like, these were medical doctors doing this, cutting off the entire muscle front and back. There's pictures of it to try and get rid of the cancer that way. And then they realized, oh, you can't, because we have a lymphatic system. Oops. We have blood, you know, that transports, you know, mutated cells to other areas of the body. Oops. So, like, do you want to be this doctor that is going to uphold bloodletting, or do you want to be someone who's open to the vast amount of research? And just because you haven't studied or read that one journal article that might hold the key to advancing, you know, the potential cure for cancer that everybody's looking for, this one pill, one hit wonder that probably doesn't exist. It's probably, like you said, it is a cocktail. It is looking at lifestyle. It is looking at mindset. It's looking at everything combined all at once. It's looking at historical implanted, you know, intergenerational trauma that is messing our nervous system up. Like, it's looking at all of these things. So David,
never one
come
thing.
on.
Never one thing.
Never one thing, and different for everybody. So what do we do? What do we do? So let me tell you one thing. I just had a conversation with Dr. Thomas Siegfried the other day, and about my client with CF. Yes. And he said, Nikki, publish a study. That is the number one thing that needs to happen first. Have you thought about doing that about you on you?
No, I've never thought about publishing a study
So
on
we
me.
need to do that.
But if
You
we
said it's
publish a study on me, I don't know. Sometimes publishing a study can make it harder to talk about, because then it's a published study and then you're not allowed to talk about it as a potential, way to help cancer or whatever. I don't know. I think there are pitfalls in that.
well, I
I
know that's how
I'm
Dr.
doing
Terry.
fine. I'm doing fine. Just I was going to publish something, actually. I had my name on a research paper, and I said, no, just take it off now. Actually, I'd just rather not actually have my name on that research paper. It was all about drugs to change the pH around, anyway, it doesn't matter. It's it's not, I pulled my name off it.
Interesting.
Which is, yeah, I'm happy being who I am, having the freedom of speech that I do.
Yeah.
I know where I am right now. If I start publishing and doing things, there may be other rules that I'll have to sit within or do. I don't know. I don't feel comfortable right now moving out of where I am. And I feel happy in the space that I am right now. I'm independent. I'm an author. I'm a survivor. I can talk about my story. I can talk about what I've done. I can talk about, the metabolism of cancer. I've done so much research. I've done so much education. And I'm now teaching other people the stuff that I've learned. And people aren't taught this. And nobody's ever, my Metro Map is kind of like, people have gone, wow, how come nobody's thought of that before and actually made this little metabolism look simple, and to show how it shifts around that triangle, and and people they get cancer actually eventually. They have to read sometimes a few times, but the point is that it's all about education and to learn about the different ways that it behaves. And cancer behaves it's very clever. It'll switch from one thing to another, but the point is to block multiple pathways, and then it can't switch from one to the other. So that's the key, and that's why you need the cocktail, to stop it shifting and changing, mutating, and switching its metabolism. So it's a cocktail to block multiple routes at the same time.
I like that. And that's why the one thing I said to you at the beginning, if this was your last interview that you're ever going to do, what is the one thing that you want people to know? And why don't
you educate? Yeah. And it's all about educating yourself and trying to work out the phenotype of your cocktail, of what the cancer's behaving like, what it needs, what it's driven by, what's fueling it. And if you see cancer like a parasite that it's constantly needing to feed, which it does, it doesn't have the food, it just withers away and dies. That's that fact. That's what happens. It can't continue unless it's constantly dividing, constantly feeding, constantly dividing. It won't survive. So that's the way to ultimately, my view, ultimately defeat it, is to use that, and then to reboot the immune system at the same time, so that we then have an immune system that keeps it suppressed. So my immune system was a mess for many years with my CF and everything else. I just always thought my lung issues were as a result of having had a tumor in my lungs and all the chemo and radiotherapy. I never thought for a second it was CF. For years.
No, and that is the challenge too, is that we have these confounding factors, which COVID did show as well, right? It really brought that to light, that when you have confounding factors, then you throw COVID on top of it, then all of a sudden it's a good recipe for death, right? But that was the first time that a lot of people were looking at that, and now I hope it's woken up the world to say, you know what, I don't want to go into the next viral scare with diabetes and a leaky gut and with, heart conditions and autoimmune disorders and
all leads you to much worse outcomes. And I know my CF puts me at a disadvantage And I've got 2 APOE4 genes as well on top, which is just lovely. Thank you very much. So really, I'm a walking disaster.
But you are also proving
Ah,
what your theory is that when we take care of the organism, when we take care of the cell, the intracellular environment, the extracellular environment, the environment outside of our body as well, our human body, then look at you. You look young, you're vibrant, you are researching, your mind is clear and it's working. You've beat cancer 3 times, which is unheard of in this world. There's very few people that do that. And so you're living proof that what you are talking about actually works, given that you have more confounding factors than the average human being.
yeah, it's true.
Yes. And I don't want to use the words that you are a miracle because of the fact that you made all this happen. You had the courage.
I think I was lucky. I was lucky in some respects that I fell into looking at the right research papers at the right time. That my mum died, in a way, was almost lucky for me, because it made me wake up and realize that I couldn't just sit around and wait for cancer to get me. I needed to do some work. I needed to educate myself at this point. I think she died and saved me as a result. I really do. So there are lots of things that sort of happen in my life. The fact I was a physio, for example, so I already had some medical knowledge, and I wasn't blinded by looking at the medical profession in a particular way. I had a lot of autonomy as a physio. They're not so autonomous now. They have to, the RCTs don't show that manipulation or that particular technique works. So they've stopped doing a lot of physio techniques that I would be happily using back in my day, because there aren't enough randomized clinical trials to show. Whereas it works. Like, Christ, I'd do something on a patient and they'd, from being crippled, bent over when they came in, they'd walk out laughing and smiling and skipping. So but because the RCTs didn't show it. But I was not blinded by we have to do this in a particular way. No, I had that experimental head on my shoulders, I guess, and
we all can have.
Yeah, and I am a little bit more, I guess, a risk taker than many people are, and
I'm glad that you are, because look what you've produced for the world. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I want to thank you for this interview and for sharing yourself and for being the risk taker and for not letting these naysayers bring you down. And how can people find you if they want to work with you?
I think if they've got cancer, they absolutely need to join my Facebook group, which is Jane McLelland Off-Label Drugs for Cancer. Nice, snappy name.
Yes.
So
perfect.
Find that, and then follow my How to Starve Cancer page, which has much more sort of how to starve cancer info. My off-label drugs, I started in 2015, and it's got a whole load of information. It's also got positive progress reports, so people who have actually followed the kind of protocol. I don't have a specific protocol, but they've worked out their own protocols, and they've done very well. So these are people who've done very well. So you can find different types of cancer who've used different protocol, and we have what they've done. Positive progress reports, hashtag positive progress, and you can look up different types of cancers, and you'll find that in my group. It's a massive resource. I'm absolutely scared that they're going to try and cancel it or delete it or something. I'm really very worried about that. So I'm trying to get everybody to be really good about what they post. And I've had friends with similar kind of Facebook pages have them taken down just for posting a recipe. Right, I'm very particular about what goes into my group. It's got to be research. It's got to be PubMed articles, or somebody can report their positive progress. People get very frustrated with my group because it's not constantly discussing things. It's meant to be a resource hub, an information hub for people. I don't want it to be a sort of chitty chat. It can be chitty chatty in the comments, but I want the actual post that goes up to be information about something that's going to be pertinent to somebody. A lot of stuff gets repeated, every now and then, because that's what happens, but that's fine. And I just want to keep it going as a really good quality information zone. I can't do that on Twitter, I can't do that on Instagram. No. Facebook, unfortunately, is kind of my main platform, but it's also the platform where they could probably take me down the easiest. So, you
need to have a backup of every one of those posts, 100%.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's an awful lot, but I have got somebody working on that, and good. It's
good. Well, you and I are going to stay connected, so we can. I would love to do another show with you because there are hours of questions that I have for you, of course. So I'd love to have you back on the show. YouTube will pull this show down. We'll just put it back up, change the title, and keep doing that. Do this dance with them. But I want to put
staff cancer. Well, maybe you have to. I don't know. Don't know what you have to. I don't know. Christ, look at Dr. William Lee. He did the starve cancer. How can you eat to starve cancer? And he's had billions of views on his YouTube. Exactly. So how are we going to stop him?
You know what? You just got to keep doing it. Keep doing
it.
Yes.
Keep pushing.
Yes. So thank you so much for being on this show, sharing your wisdom and knowledge.
I can't wait to have you on again. Thank you.
Yes.
Great. Okay. Well, hopefully we'll speak again.
Thank you for listening to the Eat Real to Heal podcast. Jane's journey from being told she had only weeks to live to becoming cancer-free is a powerful reminder of the body's ability to heal when given the right tools. If her story inspired you, please share this episode with someone who needs hope and healing. And to keep learning how food and lifestyle can reverse chronic disease, subscribe and join us for more conversations that empower you to take your health into your own hands. Until next time, eat real to heal.